Hello,
Can you,
Abiola.
yeah, can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah,
All right.
you are not audible. I can hear you
Oh,
now.
okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you for the opportunity, right, to have this discussion with these amazing people that we have on board our the Wella Health School. First things first. My name is Abiola Olatunde. I'm a visual and brand designer. One thing I'll need from us today is our feedbacks. So if you can hear me, I would just like that you unmute your mic and let me know that you can hear me properly.
Yes, I can hear you clearly from my side.
All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So at intervals, right, I would be requesting that you give me feedback if you can hear me and if you are actually following what I'm saying. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure.
Sir.
All right. Can you please confirm that you can still see my screen?
Yes, your screen is actually visible.
And what is showing on my screen?
We can
please?
see your screen.
User-centered brand design, bridging
All right.
design.
All right. So that's
Yes.
that's what we'll be talking about tonight. I know you guys have been learning so much from Brian. You've been learning so much product design from Brian, but there's one thing that is very important, right? It's the act of understanding way beyond what product design is, and that is the reason why Brian told me to come and talk about brand designing. I would have just decided to talk about colors, talk about typography, talk about a whole lot of things that has to do with branding. But I intentionally wanted to create a bridge between, branding itself and creating design that is actually accessible by the users, because you guys are actually user-centered designers. Every designer should be user-centered anyways, but you guys are the one creating products that people would use. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So that's the reason why tonight we'll be looking at user-centered brand design, bridging design, and accessibility. All right. So first things first, what makes a good designer? Whether a product designer, a brand designer, a visual designer, whichever designer you are, what makes a very good designer? Now, it's quite simple, right? The first thing is, you need to understand the fundamentals of design. I'm sure that, I don't know if you guys have been taught fundamentals of design, right? In many cases, right, people readily skip the principles to follow an easy route to get something. They skip principles. They would usually want to follow, shortcuts, especially we Nigerians. You just want to design, and most people, including myself sometimes anyways, will just pick up templates online and then, begin to design, ignoring every form of principles that are available. Now, you see, the neglect of the basics of design is a wrong move for any designer, that would want to, that aspire to be good at their craft. Do you understand? So the knowledge of the fundamental of design, you all know what the fundamental of designs are. Balance. Hold on a minute, please. All right, thank you. Balance, contrast, alignment, hierarchy, I'm sorry, color psychology and all these things.
Yeah, Abiola,
Oh, yeah?
you know what the fundamentals we learned, the fundamentals I took them through is fundamental of product user experience design, that UI UX design. So
Oh, okay.
the fundamentals of graphic design, you are going to teach them all of that. So don't assume that they know anything about
Okay.
fundamentals of graphic design because we didn't go through it. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Because of our time, we might not really go into the intricates of
I beg, Abiola, I beg. Please give them all the time that they have time. I beg, they have time. If you have time, please, I beg, generous with your time.
oh,
Just let it be as contain as much information, as you will. Forget about their own time. If you have time, give it. If they cannot take it, don't worry, it will be on record. Thank you.
all right, no problem. All right, no problem at all. So we'll just look at few fundamentals of designs, like Brian has said. A lot of people have different fundamentals of design, right? A lot of people include shape in their fundamental of design and all those things, but I am going to take us through that that fundamental of design. First and foremost, one of the major things that you must understand when it comes to designing is that for whatever design you want to design, there needs to be balance. Like, I'm just going to, paraphrase. I won't teach a lot because, like Brian said, if I have time, I actually don't have so much time, but I want to give my time, right? One of the things that you must understand is creating balance in your design, right? First and foremost, there's something that is called symmetrical and asymmetrical balance in design. So when you look at most designs, you would see some designs are tilting to the left and right, and then some are tilting to the center. I mean, you would see the balance. You would see that there's an anchor point in, for example, a flyer, and then you would see that a lot of the designs are centered to the middle. That's a balance, and that balance starts from the anchor point, which is in the middle. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Then another fundamental of design is contrast. Where you this does not just have to do with color alone. A lot of people just feel that contrast has to do with color. Contrast also has to do with typography. Contrast also has to do with shapes and all those things. The way you bring a balance to the kind of colors that you use is contrast. The way you bring a balance to the kind of shapes that you use in your design is also contrast. And then there's alignment, there's hierarchy, there is reading. So there's a particular reading, there's a particular flow that your design should follow. So those are like the fundamentals of design. So every good designer, everyone that would want to be a good product designer, brand designer, visual designer, must learn the fundamentals of design. So I would most likely share with Brian some articles that you guys can read as regards the fundamentals of design. So it's easier for you to grasp every single thing that you need to understand about the fundamentals of design. So that's number one. Number two is conducting thorough research. I would like to ask, are you guys following me? So just signify if you're following me. Let me just.
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. All right. Conducting thorough research is another way to become a very good designer. Proper research is actually essential in every developmental methodology, especially for a designer. So a good designer, a good product designer, a good brand designer, a good visual designer would gather information, would gather feedbacks, would analyze feedbacks from target audience, market trends, competitors, especially you guys that are creating products. So one of the ways to be a very good product designer is to ensure that you learn how to conduct thorough research. One of the people that I know that does not use research to play and does a lot of research is your facilitator, Brian. He does a lot of research. So if you are going to be a very good product designer, you must learn to analyze feedbacks from your target audience, market trends, competitors, right? And then you begin to allow this informations to influence your design decisions. So when you are creating designs, you begin to allow what customers are saying, the information that you've gathered from the market trends, the information you gathered about the competitors, begin to inform the way your design direction would go. Are we together? So another thing that you need to also understand is, or you need to be good at, is storytelling. You know, I mean, everybody loves stories. Everybody loves good stories. I mean, if I want to get the attention of, for example, a lady now, guys would usually tell a lot of stories, right? And, you know, most ladies would always listen to the sweetest story. And that's the same, that the same goes to product designing, or as a designer, you must learn how to tell good stories, not just stories. You not just come up with some stuffs and then you just begin to tell them. No, you tell good stories. A designer who tell compelling stories through design is an asset. That's the truth. So a designer who tells compelling story through product designing is an asset. So good storytelling is essential for creating memorable and impactful brand experiences. You would notice that you would have seen stories like stories from Pepsi, from Nike, from Adidas and major brands, right? You would see that the kind of designs that they have pushed out would usually stick to the target market. And the target market begins to relate to the experience that their designers have created through the stories that they are telling. I mean, you'd see that majorly. You'd see that in the different advertisements pushed out by Nike. You begin to see that they talk more of resilience. They talk more of athletic, the whole athletic thing. They talk more of the push, how to thrive and all those kind of things. It embodies what their story is about. So when they are pushing out design, the kind of image that they use, the kind of words that they use, the kind of typography that they use would inform, would take influence from what they are trying to pass across to the general public. So are we together?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's continue, right? Another thing that you need to also know is the effective use of words, right? The effective use of words. It's very, very important. If you're a good storyteller, obviously you must know how to use your words. You must incorporate them into the contents that your designs would convey. It would be, how would I say it now? It would be effective in your brand messages. It would be effective in the way you play with emotions, the personality of the brand, and all those kind of things, right? So, like I gave an example of Nike, you would begin to see that their use of words, just go online, you just see different kind of images that Nike have what they have created. You begin to see the way they use their images to pass across their message. Now, their use of word is, you would see that it pairs well with the images that they are using. So a lot of people will just design and the image they will use would not sync with the words that they are trying to portray. So one of the things that you need to learn how to do is to be a good storyteller, and then you need to learn how to use your words properly. Another thing is, for example, for the fact that you're a product designer, one thing that you must also learn to do is be emphatic. You know, empathy implies, figuratively, putting ourselves in the user's shoes. Now, feeling what they feel and learning how those emotions influences their actions. So whatever the users feel, it's important that you begin to allow it influence how you design. So you begin to understand and you are empathizing with the end users. to improve your design. So you are not just designing for yourself, you are designing because people would have to use what you are designing. That's the goal. So because you are a product designer and the product is not for you, the product is for people out there. So you need to learn to figuratively put yourself in the shoes of others. Now, another thing is, I'm just going to summarize these next few ones. Another thing that you need to learn is testing. I mean, I'm sure that Brian would have taught you all these ones now, empathy, testing, and all those kind of things. But I'm just going to say that testing is you utilizing. You need to learn to utilize testing to experiment and optimize design solutions to provide better results. You need to learn to utilize testing to experiment and optimize design for, design solutions to provide better results. So all these things that I've listed are things that you need to learn such that you can begin to create good designs, and you'll be regarded as a very good designer. So you're not just pushing pixels, you're not just on your laptop and you're working and then you are not creating anything at all. Because it's one thing to know how to use software, is another thing to create exceptional products. All right. So let's continue, right? All right, I'm coming. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And I hope you are following also.
Yes.
And I hope I'm not boring you guys with my talk. All right, so
No,
let's.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so let's continue. Now, the evolution of accessibility in brand designing or product designing, let's just use that as product designing. Accessibility is simply the ease of access. It makes the web, information, and the environment usable for diverse group, right? Accessibility cuts across various areas, including language, gender, socioeconomic status, and an ability. Now, when I mean accessibility, I mean the like I explained, it's simply the ease of access. The ease of access in the sense that the ability of the users or the ability of people to make use of something. And like I said, it includes language. Say, for example, you are creating a product and then the product is centered around a particular set of people, such that people that are not within that demographic cannot use that product. It means that that product is not accessible. And then there is gender too. You cannot create a product that would be gender biased. You can't create a product unless you are creating a product solely for a particular gender. And say, for example, in fact, a lot of products today would still be gender inclusive. Say, for example, the Flow app that ladies use. I mean, you can actually share your Flow app with your spouse, and that app is not gender biased. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the same thing goes for social economic status and ability. You need to create products that even people with disability can interact with. So accessibility in design is the accommodation of underrepresented or ignored users, especially users with disability, users gender-based stuffs, and and all these things have to do when you are creating designs or design materials. So design and brand designing or product designing is one of the design needs that needs accessibility, or the design areas that need accessibility. So the first thing that we are going to be looking at in accessibility for design is implementing accessibility in brand strategy. You see, right? brand strategy merges design and business together, right? A brand strategist is knowledgeable in market research. They use brand stories and knowledge of the customer's behavior to develop a company's framework. That's the work of a brand strategy. So what they do is they take the story of a brand and they mix it with customer behavior to develop a company's brand framework. Now, it's expected to assume that that the brand strategy's work is to satisfy the client. So just like you guys are also product designer, it is your duty to satisfy only your client. So for an accessible brand, brand strategy goes beyond client satisfaction. Product design goes beyond client satisfaction also sometimes. So the satisfaction extends to your target markets too. Are we together? So the customers are essential in what you design. They are essential part of what you design. Accessibility encourages the accommodation of different customers. So the fact that customers are essential part of your design or essential part of what you are building, you need to also understand that there are diverse kind of customers that are blind, customers that can't walk, customers that can't talk, customers that cannot use their hand, customers that are male, customers that are female, customers that are in China, customers that are in Bahrain, customers that are in different locations, right? So you need to understand that accessibility then accessibility encourages the accommodation of everybody. So some of the steps to actually take to ensure inclusion includes number one, you need to encourage if you are, for example, you are trying to create a product for a particular stakeholder, right? You need to encourage these stakeholders to invest in thorough research. That's one of the things that you need to learn if you are going to create an inclusive product. They need to invest in thorough research and market survey. So this research would then begin to include customers of different abilities. You begin to take questions around all those things, take questions. The research and market survey would include languages, socioeconomic status, and all those kind of things, right? And during the research, a comprehensive customer analysis should be done. So this research would include their demography, pain points, their needs, and their motivation. So all these things will begin to inform you on how to create better products, how to create better designs. Are we together?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so now to the next one, right? Implementing accessibility in brand identity. Now, I would like to explain what brand identity actually is. Now, you can see the design by the side, right? It's an identity for a brand, right? Are we together? Now, a brand voice, personality, and originality is what makes up a brand identity. So one thing that you need to understand when you are creating design is that brands have a voice. Brands have a voice. Brands have a personality. Brands have originality. Now, a good brand identity builds a connection with visual design. So a brand identity designer, for example, that I am, creates brand guide, logo identity, voice, color, and other design materials that communicates the brand identity. So what I've just explained to you now is what a brand identity design should include. So it should include logo, it should include voice, the way the brand speaks. That's what I refer to as voice. it should include color and every other design materials that communicate the brand identity. Now, one thing that a lot of people make mistake about is color. Now, a lot of people just feel that putting two colors together is what creates an identity. You know, I was having a session with some people this morning, and I mean, I was trying to review the design they've created, right? So the person was asked to create a brand around urban eats, like, I mean, a restaurant that is into cloud food and, you know, street food and all those kind of things, right? And the very first thing that the person came up with was the design was actually very nice, but, you know, the fact that design is just nice is not enough. Does the design have a voice, and does the design emit emotion? Now, so when the person created the design, he used green and yellow as the primary color for the brand for a food business. So that automatically cues the idea of that brand. So color and its usage speak volume in design accessibility, right? Accessibility in color is integrated by creating a variety of color palettes with, I mean, different tones and tints, right? So the color palettes accommodates users who are colorblind and users that have difficulty in identifying information by color. So incorporating a good background color for design is another way to make color accessible. So color alone is not used to convey information. So you need to learn how to create a palette that, you know, that would begin to involve the emotion of people. Are we together? Are we together?
Yep.
Yes, we are together now.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so apart from color, right, you need to learn how to make the brand's voice clear and direct. So in your communication now, like I gave you an assignment, right? When you go on the internet and you look at adverts done by Nike, you begin to see that their brand voice is clear and direct. So one of the things that you need to avoid is ambiguity. You need to avoid it as much as possible, such that you are not confusing your users. So you need to understand. That the way you portray the voice of your brand can confuse users, right? So understandable brand concepts are inclusive. They are inclusive to all customers, including people with language barriers. So the way you create your brand voice must be clear and direct enough for people with I don't know, I've forgotten the name that this thing is called. I think it's called cognitive disability. People with cognitive disability, people with language barriers. So you need to create a voice that resonates around these people. You need to be, they need to be included in what you're doing, right? So that's for how how you can implement accessibility in brand design, in brand identity, right? Another way to implement accessibility is in typography. Now you can see the font that is right beside on the right hand side, right? You can see how clear it is, right? So the sole act of using typefaces is to create eligible, user-friendly, and visually appealing characters. So applying proper typography or typefaces would actualize the way you create legible and user-friendly characters, right? You see, the anatomy of typeface covers is very, very important in the way you create typography. Now, you are all product designers, right? Now, when you begin to design now, you begin to use a whole lot of fonts, a whole lot of typefaces, and it's very important that you know the different kind of, the different categories of typefaces that we have. I'm going to give you an example. So if you're writing, you can write this down. The kind of typefaces that we have would include serif typefaces. We have sans serif typefaces. Serif is spelled as S-E-R-I-F. And then we have display typefaces too. I mean, a lot of different kind of design typefaces. Having, say, for example, icon kind of typefaces and all those kind of things, right? So we have this kind of typefaces. Now, when you are, the anatomy of typefaces would include, I mean, what I just listed out now are the categories of typefaces. I'm giving you the anatomy of typefaces now. They include line height. They would include stroke. They would include the cap height. They would include the stem. They would include the weight, whether it is going to be light, whether it is medium, whether it is large, whether it is bold, whether it is extra bold, stuff like that. Now, all these things that I've mentioned now, they make up the font or the typeface. They make up the font and form the base of diverse font creation. So when people create their font, they put into cognizance all these things that I've mentioned, the cap height, the weight. So somebody creating a font would not just create a font that is not, that you cannot switch to bold or extra bold. So all those things are very important when, when typography creators are creating their typography, right? So accessibility in typography encompasses the kind of fonts that you use and the usage of these fonts. So accessibility is displayed in typography via varying styles, weights, and fonts. I'm going to show you an example, right? I'm going to show you an example. Let's go to the next slide. Now, when you look at the different, the three typographies that we have. So the first one is Kenel, the second one is Fonnes, and the third one is we have both Kenel and Fonnes there. Now, when you look at the first one, now if you are not careful, look at the two typography at the top. When you look at it from afar, you would not see it as Kenel. You would see it as Kemel, because R and M are very, very, they are too close. And that is what is called poor kerning in design. So kerning is usually the space between two letters in a word, right? So the space between them, for example, the space between the R and the N is in this in what has been written here is a poor kerning. The kerning is not correct at all. Now, let's go back to the to this one. When you look at the kerning between these, you can see that the anikulapo is properly written, and it's easier for you to it's easier for anybody to read. So even if you cannot see from afar, you would see the extra bold, and then you'll be able to visualize it properly, right? So it's important that when you are creating designs, when you are building products and all those things, you put into cognizance your typography. So you need to learn how to implement accessibility in typography. It's very, very important. So when you have, like I explained, kerning, when you have tight kerning and small text spaces, it causes difficulty for users with visual disability to read, right? So poor kerning is frequently encountered with the serif font. So when you are using serif font, you must be very, very intentional, and you must pay attention to details, especially as regards the kerning. So another thing I want you to know is that poor character spacing, it triggers what they call diacetylis in users, right? So people would begin to misread words, like I've explained. They would misread it. So instead of reading, say for example, in what we have here, instead of reading furnace as furnace, they will read it as formace, or instead of reading canal, you read it as camel. So you need to be very, very important. So because at the end of the day, the way you pass, one of the ways you are going to pass your design to people, one of the ways you are going to make your design accessible to people is in the good use of typography. Now let's go to the next slide. All right. So before we go to the next slide, right, I would like to add this to what I said before. Now, when you are designing, emotional bias needs to be considered in accessibility, right? Now, different typefaces exist for different purposes. Are we together? Different typefaces, they exist for different purposes, right? So when typefaces are improperly employed, they communicate wrong emotions and they confuse the users. So the more the users are exposed to a typeface, the easier it is for them to read. And like I said, this is called unconscious bias. So you need to do proper research on fonts. You need to do proper research on typefaces before you begin to use them. All right, so now the next slide, implementing, oh, this is supposed to be icon design. Implementing accessibility in icon design. Are we still together? Please confirm you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
All right, thank you. All right. Implementing accessibility in icon design. Now, an iconographer, Linda Ojo, she defined brand design as a language that identifies a group of people or a business. She defined it as a company that communicates and bonds with customers through its brand identity, right? Now, as you begin to create products as product designers, right, or as a brand designer, whichever one, you begin to use different kind of icons, right? And it is very, very imperative. It is very, very important that you pay attention to what I want to say. A lot of people just use icons because they feel that, when you want to write social media, you just slap Facebook logo in one part, slap Instagram logo, and all those kind of things, right? It's very important that you learn how to use icons. Now, look at this particular icon by the side, right? You'll see that this is a line icon style. Now, we have different kind of icon styles. We have field icon styles. We have line icon styles. We have duotone icon style. So when you are designing, I just want to chip this in. When you are designing, as you begin to design, if you are, say for example, you are creating a product and the brand identity that has been created, or you yourself as you have created for the brand, it would require you to use a field icon. Now, the moment you start using a field icon, for consistency's sake, I'm just saying this is, by the way, right? For consistency's sake, you continually use that same field icon till you are done creating that brand or till you are done creating that product. So you cannot start by using a field icon and then you begin to use line icon, you begin to use duotone icon. Already it begins to make, like I said initially, fundamentals of design, you would begin to see that there is no balance in what you are creating. Are we together? So now let's continue, right? So the use of icon is an excellent step towards accessibility because icon seem excusable when you are designing, but their effect on design, when you use them in design, they are very, very remarkable, right? So one thing that icon offer is assistance and option to every kind of users. So one icon expands brand language and icon evokes accessibility. So the first step you need to take in integrating accessibility in icon design is to use accessible images in icon creation. So if you are going to be creating icons, you need to use images that people can recognize. Are we together? You need to use images that people can recognize. So when you look at the image by the side, you'd see that the images are recognizable. So you'd see that the first one is a man sitting and then there's a dog in front of him. The second one is a sign to let people know that when you go close to the water, you can drown. Like they are also accessible. The last one is obviously a smartwatch, right? So all these things, when you are creating icons or when you are making use of icons, when you are including icons in your design, you need to use icons that their images are familiar, that people can familiarize themselves with the image. So icons not only improve accessibility for users with disability, they also foster diversity. They foster inclusion for foreigners and users with language barrier. So somebody that is in China now would surely understand that this is a man sitting down and there's a dog in front of him. So you don't necessarily have to write so much for the person to know this. So even if you are going to write a text in front of this icon, even if you write it in Yoruba, if you write it in Igbo, you write it in Hausa, if you take that product and take it to somewhere like China, the person would still understand that it's a man sitting down on a chair and there's a dog in front of him. Are we together? So it is easier to break that language barrier using icon. Another thing that icon promotes is it promotes inclusion for users who are not literate enough, right? So say for example now, this icon would always so you go to rural areas now and people that cannot read English, even if you don't have access to creating like a Yoruba or Igbo local language and all the rest like that, right? The icon already tells the person, say for example, you want to put this second icon in a river, at a river bank, and then you want it to interact with people. In fact, even if the language is English, whoever is coming close to that river bank would already see that sign, that icon, and that icon would, automatically communicate to that person that this is what and what should be done. This is what and what should not be done, right? So an image that represents or that is accessible is what should be used every single time you are using an icon in your product or in your brand. So another thing that icon does is that icon aids users with low vision, people that cannot see properly, people that cannot see word written clearly, users with learning disability who needs image to understand words. So those are what icons are very good at doing for people, right? Icons can be digital, they can be physical, right? So another thing that I would like to say is that texture can be added to your icon to emphasize extent, to emphasize emotion, to emphasize their usage in general, right? Say for example, textures on physical signs are helpful to people that are blind, right? So say for example, you want to help people that are blind to navigate somewhere, or a welcome door sign. I mean, you can create, you see that icon that has been created can be converted into a texture such that once someone that is blind touches it, the person can feel what is actually written on that door, right? So
You mean like it's engraved or embossed or something like that, right?
yes. Thank you, Brian. So such that, once the person begins to feel what has been embossed, that texture, it could be an hologram or something, what has been embossed, right? The person begins to understand. It communicates to the person where the person is, or what the person is to do, or the next step, the next action for the person to take. So when you see, let's go to the next slide, you'd see what I'm talking about, right? Now, so you can see what I'm talking about, right? This image is, you can see below, you can see that, I don't know what it's called, Brian. I think it's Braille stuff. I don't know what it's called, right? But I know it's Braille, and it's used it's used to help blind people read. It's used to help them to communicate with signs and all those kind of things. So
Yeah,
that's,
they are called grills.
yeah. So
Grill.
those brills down there would help would help blind people to understand the next action to take. You can see that the icon is also very, very inclusive. It's not just for male and female alone. It's also to let people with disability know that they can also use the restroom. You can see that person on wheelchair there. So it's very important that you begin to learn how to use icons properly. Now, what are the ways to integrate icons? What are the accessible ways accessibility can be integrated into iconography? So number one, right, if you are writing, number one, you need to create icons that represent people with disability, right? Create icons that should be, that people with disability can, interact with. So because it fosters inclusion and represents the importance of people with disability in the society. So it's very, very, very important. Another thing, like I said initially, is to add texture. Now, when I say texture, I'm talking about embossing. I'm talking about, so you want to print your business card, say for example, right? You can decide that you want to be all inclusive, such that even a blind person can hold the business card and can read it. So you can do spot lamination on the business card, and the person just fills the card, and the person begins to understand, oh, this is what is written here, this is what is written here, right? So add texture to physical signs. Add texture to physical signs. Now, the added texture benefits visually impaired users, and it is recommended to add texturized Braille character on signs for blind users. It's very, very important. Another thing is use colored icons on a good contrast background. Use colored icons on a good contrast background. So you don't just use icons and just use colored icons and it's not visible for people to see. Say for example, you don't use Facebook blue icon now and you use it on a navy blue background. People are not going to see it, right? So it's very, very important. So alternatively, what you could have just used is a white Facebook background, and it's going to come out, it's going to pop, like people would usually say, right? Let's continue. Another thing that you need to also do is when they are integrating iconography, is to use size 16 as the least size of your digital icon, such that people can see it. Size 16 as your least size, for digital icons. Another thing you need to do is to pair icon with text in labels. So when you are creating a product that would involve you designing labels, ensure that you pair icons with text. It's very, very important because even though a lot of people can interact with icons, not everybody would understand what the icon will mean. So, I mean, just try as much as you can to pair it with a text. Use simple and familiar words for text labels. Just very simple. So you are using an icon that you will not now write like 3 paragraphs just so that you want to explain what the icon is. Do you understand? So you need to be concise. You need to be straight to the point when you are adding text to an icon. Provide clear and understandable descriptions for icons. User tests are also required when creating icons. Ensure that, all right. Ensure that users understand the image they are supposed to represent. Don't assume that they know it all. So it's very, very important that you put into cognizance all these things that I have listed out. So let's go to the next one, right? Because of our time. Implementing accessibility in illustrations. Now, imagery is one of the best ways to communicate our emotions, right? Images relates to people. This knowledge can be implemented while creating brand illustrations. Brand illustration would range from standalone brand art to illustrations embedded in a brand design system. Now, when you look at what we have by the side, you see that that's an illustration. And when you are crafting a brand illustration or when you are using brand illustration in your design, we must ensure that the illustration that you are using employs aesthetics. It employs visuals and the right tools. So the brand, whatever you are creating, the imagery for that brand or that product stimulates the audience's fear, the audience's curiosity and excitement. So let me give you an example. Some brands uses the power of imagery, aesthetics, and motion to embody their relevance to their customers. I gave you an example of Nike, right? What Nike would usually use all the time is images. You would hardly see a Nike advertisement that has icon or illustration. So what they do is that they employ the right imagery. Some other brand uses aesthetics. Say, for example, Pepsi. Pepsi use a lot of, when they are creating their adverts and their designs, they use a lot of aesthetics. They use a lot of patterns and all those kind of things. You would see that it's different. It is different brand with different how would I call it now? Different brand with different way by which they implement accessibility to the users. So it's important that when you are using illustration, you must understand what the how would I say it now? The product you are creating and who the users of that product are. Now, proper image description are necessary for users with visual impairment. I think I've explained this. It's quite similar to the icon, but you know, I mean, icons would not usually be as big as illustrations. So when you are using illustrations, right, image description improves the usage of how would I say it now? A lot of applications would always give you alternative text, right? Such that even if people don't understand what that illustration is, the illustration you are using, they can always read what's that illustration. But it's very important that you use.
Okay. Let me pop in a bit. So apart from that, right, alt text is important for users that are visually impaired. Believe it or not, blind people also go to the internet, and when they do, they rely on alt text to understand the images that are being shown there. So if, for instance, you have on your website you put on like an image of an old woman in their song, people who can see, who don't have any visual impairments, will see that okay, this is an image of a woman with a boy, but blind people cannot see it. So if, for instance, maybe that image is supposed to communicate something, you've been able to communicate that to people who can see, but people who are visually impaired cannot understand, like they've not seen the image. So what alt text also does is read out in such situation, because blind people, the way they navigate the internet is through screen readers, right? So they have a screen reading app that is able to go through the website and read everything that is on the website. So when the screen reading app comes to that picture, it will now read that alt text for them so that they understand and follow along, you know. So that's very important. Whenever you are like creating a website, if you have an image there, make sure to fill up that out part so that for visually impaired people to be able to also follow along with your design. All right, thank you very much. Carry
Yeah, you're welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for adding that. Now, before like Brian has said, it's very, very important that image descriptions are used in your design, especially products that you build, websites, your apps, and all those things, right? It's very, very important. It is very, very important. Another thing that you can incorporate is to incorporate concepts like music, natural sound to portray the image idea. Do you understand? So it would also help people that it appeals to the mind of visually impaired people and it would enable them to create an imaginative picture of the art that you have used in their mind. Are we together? So let's go to the next slide, right? What are the challenges a designer encounter when designing for accessibility? Number one is ignorance of brands and absence of awareness. You see, one of the things that you are going to encounter as a product designer going forward is that many stakeholders do not understand the importance of accessibility. Whether you like it or not, they do not understand. So they need qualified product designer like yourself to advise them on creating accessible products. Now, you would hear statements like, we don't have disabled people using our products. Brian, right? You hear products like, we don't have we don't have disabled people using our product. And then you think you look at yourself and say, I'm a product designer, and Brian has taught me, he even brought one brand designer to come and teach us that our product must be accessible. Now you need to a lot of designers are coerced to do what clients want. And even when it is not inclusive and when that action is going to limit the brand. So you need to be very, very intentional. You need to be aware of these things, right? So the ignorance of brands it has led to many design mistakes, including creating.
Let me add something there, please. So
Okay.
I've said it in one of our classes, but I'm going to repeat it again, right? So apart from people who have disabilities, right? The accessibility is not only important for people who have disabilities, it's also important for people who do not have a disability, because so disabilities is a range, right? So there are people, for instance, who are permanently disabled. That's the people who we are talking about now as people that have a disability. But apart from people who are permanently disabled, there are also people who are temporarily disabled, right? So it means that maybe, for instance, because they have a surgery on their eye, they temporarily cannot use their sight, right? And such people also need to be able to access your website. Apart from that, there are also people who are situationally disabled. So they are not disabled, they are not permanently or temporarily disabled, but because they find themselves in that particular situation, they cannot use their sight. Say, for instance, somebody is driving. When you are driving, you are not able to be looking at your phone at the same time. So it means at that time you are situationally, visually impaired. So you now rely on those technology and that design that is designed for people who are permanently or temporarily disabled to be able to navigate, the digital product. So that is why it is important, because when you design for people who are disabled, you design automatically for people who are also situationally disabled, making your product useful at every time to everybody. So that is the business case for designing for accessibility. All right, carry on.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much. So like I said, it's very important that um, you you understand these things and you're aware of it. Another thing that another challenge is lack of resources and support. It's quite common in many products projects, right? When you are building products, lack of resources, lack of support is one of the things that are very common. So most stakeholders do not fund accessibility when they are building products. They limit the and they limit the efficiency of the designer's work. So they try to cut costs and exclude essential research work and all those kind of things, right? Would are part of the challenges that are going to be facing. So research is, like I said initially, is one of the first steps in resolving accessibility issues in a project. But when all these things are not there, you begin to have issues, creating a very good project. Another challenge is limited time provided. A lot of brands are they are always in a hurry to launch their projects. So they are often, most times, they don't take their time to design good products, right? So, and good designs would always require enough time. Are we together? So work requiring ample time is done to build an accessible brand from the research phase to the launch phase. So all these things, right? So if I'm saying this because it's a challenge, and also for you to also learn that in case you want to build a product, it's very, very important that you give your product enough time. So don't just be in a hurry to launch out the product and all those kind of things, right? And when you are communicating with your clients on the long run, later in the future, you begin to help them to see all these challenges such that it's easier for you to block them. Another thing is what I call blinding aesthetics. You see, recently design has been primarily recognized by aesthetics alone. A lot of people just feel that design is just about color, it's just about how beautiful the design is, right? And you see, this mindset has erased the ability to balance aesthetics and usability to side by side, right? Now, design elements like I said, colors, images, shapes, fonts, they are used to enhance aesthetics. And you see, the more you use these things to enhance aesthetics, you must also come to a balance where this aesthetics meets accessibility standard. So what I'm trying to say is you must learn to create a balance of aesthetics and accessibility. It's a necessity. So you're not just creating fine designs and they are not accessible. On the other hand, also, you are not creating accessible design that is not aesthetically pleasing. So you see that you have to create a balance there. And finally, another challenge is education and awareness. Very, very important. A lot of designers have limited understanding when it comes to accessibility in design. See, accessibility is not always a part of the curriculum when they are teaching products and all those things, right? But it's important for you to learn it properly. It's important I'm very happy that you guys are in the class and the class is recorded. You can always come back to listen to some of the things that have been said, and then you can begin to build on it, read extensively on it, and then you develop yourself to become a very good designer. A lack of professional in the field and scale of importance is also part of the challenge. It's very, very important. People assume that accessibility benefits only a minority, and it is okay to ignore it. But let me tell you, you are not building a very good product like that. And you yourself, when you think in that manner, it shows that you're not a very good product designer. So now, let's go to the last or the penultimate slide. Importance of accessibility in design. Importance of accessibility in design. Number one, accessibility enhances brand engagement. Every brand desires to reach a large audience. So accessibility in brand design makes it possible for you to reach a large audience, right? It makes your product more user-friendly and appealing to more users. It's also very inviting to more users. So it enhances brand engagement. Number two, it attracts more investors. You know, investors work with businesses with potential return of investment, right? They are interested in an investment that stands the test of time. So when you build a product that is accessible, I can tell you that it will always stand the test of time. And when a product is inclusive, it builds the trust of investors. So you need to understand this thing. And then again, accessibility in design expands target market. So when a brand is accessible and it caters to the need of diverse audiences with varying disability, right? More people patronize the brand. More people patronize the brand, and this in return would increase the target market, and it would also increase consumer rates. So it's very important that you put all these things at the back of your mind when you are trying to design or when you are trying to build a product. Another thing is it boosts financial growth. The increase in the potential customer base would increase the revenue generated for the business, right? That's very simple. So when you have more people, when you are reaching more people, automatically, right, it increases the revenue generated for the products that you are trying to build for whatever brand, right? So the more the customer, the more the financial growth. It's that simple. Another thing is it encourages diversity. Diversity is a business requirement and it is to be encouraged, right? An accessible brand supports inclusion and representation. So it's very important that you build a product that encourages diversity. And then finally, right, it prevents legal issues. Many countries today have disability laws that protect their people, their own people with disability, and which a lot of business are obligated to adhere to. It's very, very important. So the default of this law is fines and penalties and as consequences. So implementing accessibility or accessible design to comply with these accessibility laws and regulation is very, very imperative. So when you are building products, you need to also consider that your product is going to go far and wide and to get to countries where one day they'll just, you will not be able to use them. It's either they fine you or there's a penalty as a consequence. And at the end of the day, you begin to blame yourself that why did you not just build such products from the start? So on a final note, right, it is imperative that all designers, whether you're a product designer, you're a visual designer, brand designer, you design for accessibility. And product design is like, it's not an exemption, right? You guys have great responsibility to ensure that design components, whether it is typography, whether it is color, whether it is the voice of the product, whether it is the imagery used in the product, I mean illustration and icons also included, you have a great responsibility to ignite a clear feeling and emotion that relates to all your users, especially people with disability. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation tonight. So I would like to ask if there are questions. If you have questions to ask me, you're free to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So please, about this, it prevents legal issues. Is it
Okay.
that okay? Maybe if you initially, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So if you like you initially created a product for a particular set of people, and then maybe someone else that you did not have in mind when you created that product cannot have access to that product. The person can just decide that, okay, since I don't have access to this product, he or she might be able to sue you. Is that what you're implying?
No, what I'm trying to imply is that um ideally, right, when you are building a product, the first thing that comes to your mind, like we have explained all through the class, is that you build a product that is inclusive of everybody. Now, what I am trying to say now is that it prevents legal issues because a lot of countries have disability laws. A lot of countries, and it's very good, right? Because they try as much as they can to protect people with disability. They want to ensure that people with disability are included in the grand scheme of things when it comes to product and everything that people use in their day-to-day life, right? So when you build a product that does not, and the truth is that most of these countries, right, it's a law in their country. They are not just saying it with their mouths. There are consequences for you not adhering to these laws. So now, when you now build a product, say you are in Nigeria and a country like United Kingdom, right, they have these laws, and you are exporting your products to the United Kingdom to be used, and your product is not inclusive of people that have disabilities and all. That means that the product is directly against their law. Do you understand what I'm trying to say now?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So, do we have any other question or contribution? Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity to, like I said initially, to help people to understand what accessibility is in design. So if you have questions, you are free to ask questions before I drop off. Is Brian still on the call?
Yeah, sorry, Abiola, I'm still on the call. Yeah, so in fact, to even answer that legal question, yes, people can actually sue you. So if your product is supposed to be basically your product is supposed to be accessible to everyone. So if you design a product where people who have a certain disability are not able to use, in some countries, those people can actually sue you, and you lose a lot of money in that legal. So yeah, thank you very much, Abiola. Does anyone
You're
have any
welcome.
other question? Anything, brand? This is your time to ask. Abiola does not come twice in a year. He only comes once, so this is the opportunity to ask anything, any question you have around branding, including the branding of your own project that you're working on. If you have any questions around that, this is your time to ask him. So maybe anyone. Right. Okay. So that is it then.
All right.
Thank you very much, Abiola. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much, guys. Yeah, thank you.